So it's my opportunity to introduce you to our keynote speaker. I've known Tiffany since she was at Gartner, and some of you might have been fans of her work at Gartner in the sales effectiveness and marketing effectiveness, analyst, researcher, thought leader position. And when she got hired at Salesforce, I sent her a note, and I said, well, that's interesting. You've left the world of like supposed third-party objectivity, and now you went to work for the man. Literally the man. I mean, Benioff's the man. And so what is that saying? What are you guys trying to accomplish? What are you doing? And here's the deal. How many of you have Salesforce installed in your companies? Raise your hand. Yeah, see, they are the man, right? So in some ways, they are on the leading edge of customer experience. They learn things, they know things, they see things, they're looking for things, and have the resources to push even further and harder, I think, than some of the analyst firms could, because they have this many relationships. And so I think it's a really cool position to be sort of the guru, forward, visionary-looking thinker person for Salesforce.com. So please help me welcome to the stage, and for your listening pleasure, Tiffany Bova.
Thanks, Tim. So let me first start by saying thank you to all the Salesforce customers. I had no idea. So I appreciate your business, but more importantly, appreciate your time today. I'm going to spend about 40 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, running through some thoughts I have about continuing what I had been doing in my previous life around where I thought the future of sales was going, the impact of digital marketing and marketing, the impact of the customer on the buyer journey, and all of those things that are happening at such a rapid pace, and what I've learned in the last 18 months now being here. So I'm going to try to open it up for questions at the end, but if you have something, because it's such a small group, please just raise your hand and I'll try to answer it as I'm going along. So I am the growth and innovation evangelist here at Salesforce, which means I have zero responsibility. It's awesome. I do not work on the sales side. Nobody works for me. I don't have a sales team or a marketing team. My job is really to go out and meet with customers and find out what is making them successful, what are they challenged with, looking across the market, talking to the analyst firms, and coming up with sort of what we think and putting a position in the flag in the sand around how do we think the market is going to shift out a couple of years and how you guys can map yourself back to that. So without further ado, I like to level set. So the first thing I say is that customer-driven organizations will completely reset value and meaningful engagement with customers. No other time in my career, anyway, have I seen such level of disruption coming from the customer. So let me put a little of context here. I started out as a sales rep, an individual contributor for a startup. I was a whole team of one, and we were, a very small company. And then I moved on to work for a value-added reseller selling technology. And then I moved on to a distributor, Intercom, for any of you who remember them. Then I moved on to Sprint for a little bit. And then I landed at a web hosting company. It was the largest web hoster in the US. We were Microsoft's very first shared web hosting company. Now our shared business is web.com, for those of you who watch golf, and then Pier 1 on the dedicated side, and a lot of our IP was pushed to GoDaddy. So I was super early in these new sort of selling models, and we were a Loqua's beta client, we were Constant Contact's beta client. We were doing a lot of things that were really bleeding edge. Now this is 1999, so let me sort of time this. So I had run sales, run marketing, run customer service, and then I landed, I guess on the dark side, depends what you look like, I landed at Gartner for a decade, watching it from a different angle. And now I've come back. And what's interesting is that through the first 15 years of my career selling to customers, then observing the behavior from the analysts, the 1,000 analysts that watch and work with end users on the CIO side, I cannot remember where the customer had so much more power and control than the sales rep who's sitting across from them. The brand, the messaging, the timing, all those things are great, but think about how much we have to try to hit a very fast-moving target. And so that's why the value reset has to happen, because of the customer. So these meaningful engagements are empower your sellers to be more informed when they show up, give them the tools and technology that they need in order to be successful, whether they're on the road or sitting at their desk. But more importantly, understanding the needs of these customers is really getting challenging. because there is no shortage of data. That is not our problem. The problem is, what is the data telling us and how, and what does that mean to the value equation we offer out to the customers? So it has everything to do with these expectations. The first level of expectation used to be it was super reactive. Someone would call, we would call back. They left us a voicemail message or they sent us a fax and we would respond back, or they sent us a letter. Somehow they would reach out and we would react back to them. And now, you know, it was sort of, we had to deal with thousands of these reactive responses. We then had moved to proactive. We're going to proactively take care of our customers by looking at signals in the market, or whether it was a hardware, you know, whether it was proactive or remote monitoring and management in the tech space, whether it was, you know, it's time, the oil light comes on in the car, whatever it might be, this sort of proactive became millions of data touch points that we had to respond to. Now we are into this predictive. We are into billions and billions being powered by IoT and other things that are happening in the market, where there is a time coming up here pretty quick, prediction out of Gartner saying that by 2020, 2 billion customer support tickets will be opened by things. So who's going to respond to those customer service calls? Other things? Fascinating. I'd love to hear that conversation. Then I'd love to manage the, you know, the pipeline of those conversations of things talking to things, and the timeline, and the SLAs, and the ROI, and the TCO, and all those great terms we love. Like, what happens when things start doing that? Where does humans come in? What's the impact of that to predictive? I always like to joke that the moment my scale in my bathroom talks to my Fitbit and locks my refrigerator, I'm retiring. So if you ever hear about my retirement, know that's what happened, okay? So this prediction is in that connection, sort of what is the relationship? How do we start to share all that data? How do those things start to talk with each other? And what does that information tell us if I was the sales rep selling the scale or selling the Fitbit or selling the refrigerator? How do I message that from a marketing perspective? What do I do from a service perspective? This is really complicated. So if you're trying to do this in any way without technology, it's really tough to scale. But if you're trying to do it without technology, it starts to deliver this level of experience to your customers that they don't appreciate. And so they start to move on. And so we have to think about this kind of speed to market. So I just tweeted something out this morning, or it's coming this afternoon, I don't remember. But it was, if you don't think speed is the new currency, both Google and AWS are now pricing per second. They're pricing per second. So let's talk about negotiating that. Let's talk about selling that. Let's talk about selling the value of 1 second. That's the speed we're talking about now. It's this level that we just can't, as humans, keep up with unless we start to figure out what are the things we're actually trying to track and what do we do with that information. So you have to figure out, how do we get to the future before our customers do, and how do we meet them there? Now, you don't have to be, you know, skate to where the puck is going, yes, but you don't have to be Steve Jobs ahead. Like, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to create an entire industry ahead. It just means, look, data should be telling you something. It should be giving you signals. What are you piloting and testing to see, is that really where the customers want us to go? Yeah, you know, if we listen to what our customers want, we're going to make faster horses, sort of all that stuff. But you don't need to be listening sort of what you were hearing earlier about what they think they want. It's what do they not know they want, and how do you get there and meet them there when they show up? The only way you can do it is via technology. Now, obviously where I work now, I work at Salesforce, we'd love for it to be us, but it isn't only us. The point is that there has to be a way in which you solve these problems and these opportunities that you have with some layer of technology that brings you the capabilities in order to be this proactive, predictive kind of company centered around, more importantly, centered around your true north. And your true north is always going to be your customer. And so as tech evolves, the challenge that we have is that overall, so many things are coming at us simultaneously. Like, from a marketing perspective, how many of you in the room are on the sales side of the house? Okay, how many of you are on the marketing side of the house? Okay, I'm going to apologize up front. I pick on you guys a little bit because I'm a recovering seller. So every day I have to pick on marketing. It makes me feel better. But marketing is using all this tech. I was part of the team at Gartner that made the prediction that CMOs were going to spend more than CIOs a number of years ago, which of course set off a flurry of acquisitions from us and Oracle and everybody else. And I would tell you that the latest numbers that came out was we were only about 0.2% off on that prediction about the percentage of tech spend that's happening in marketing versus the percentage of tech spend that's happening in the CIO. And I will tell you, when we say tech spend, we didn't just mean software as a service. We mean you're buying gear, you're buying networking, you're buying consulting, you're buying apps, you're buying wireless access points, you're buying beacons, all of that stuff. And so marketing has a much larger role. My fear, though, here is that with all these advancements on the marketing side and these new evolutions on the way in which customers want to engage, is it video, is it Facebook Messenger, is it SMS, all of those things, as digital marketing has gotten more mature, I actually worry that the divide between marketing and sales has gotten bigger. Because marketing now has a little bit more control. And we all know at the end of the day, for whatever reason, it's all about control. Who owns the customer? I dare anybody. Who owns the customer? Well, woman after my own heart. But not the right answer. But who owns the customer? The company. Anybody else? So we got sales, we got the company. The customer. The customer actually owns themselves. We do not own them. Newsflash. We don't own them. We have to be engaging. We have to compel them to want to work with us. We need to add value. We need to do all the things to get them to come into our orbit. But we cannot control that they come into our orbit. We cannot control, in the spirit of the whiteboard, because I never get one. So this is great. So lots of things I love. I love the funnel. I don't love the funnel. The triangle of segmentation. Don't like that either. Because if you go, at the top, we're going to sell to this customer directly, this triangle. And right here, we're going to co-sell with our partners, this triangle. And then down here, we're going to just let them sort of long tail. How many have that triangle? I love you guys, right? Because this triangle has been around since the 90s, not the 1990s, but the 1890s under James Henry Patterson, who was the CEO of NCR. He did this that long ago. Problem with the funnel is it's this wonderful, beautiful path that happens in marketing. The customer starts here, and then they go there, and then they go here, and then they go here, and then they go here. And then there's a sale. How many of you buy like that? I get a notice, and I go, I'm going to go to their website. And then I go to their website, and then I download a white paper, and then I call. And then I engage with a sales rep. And then the sales rep sends me some information. And then I get some pricing. And I negotiate it. And I close the deal. That's what happens? Really? How many of you buy like that? We don't buy like that in our personal lives. Yet we force our customers to go through this wonderfully rigid process of, this is the way I, Mr. Company, want you, Mr. Customer, to buy my stuff. This is how I want you to buy it. This is what I think of you. This is all about me. You guys are just, here to give me some money. So what worries me about this is that when marketing it sort of injects itself in the process, we're getting better in the various channels, obviously from an omni-channel perspective, of what we can do with the customer. But the reality of what is happening is, if this were this, the sales cycle is not linear, right? It doesn't go in this great pattern. The customer may go from here to here, back to here, then to here, then to here. They might even come like I'm ready to sign the contract, and then a new guy gets hired, and we go all the way back here again. Okay, so now how many of on the sales side would ever let your sales reps take a deal backwards? Anybody? Okay, couple. The point is, many don't. If I took a deal backwards, my phone would ring. But in reality, the customers are taking me backwards. So what do? So you call me on the phone. Oh, you're from Oracle. You don't call me on the phone. That was good, right? I knew where you were sitting. You call me on the phone. I'm kidding. You guys were a great client in my last life. I love you guys. But all right, so you call me on the phone, all right, and you're here in your buying journey. Your buying journey. All right, so now it's time for me to enter it into Salesforce, into my CRM SFA system. Now I have choices. I can enter it at 5% probability to close, 10% probability, 15, 20, 25, 30. Let's say this is 100% probability to close, and let's say that this is 0. And I know he's really probably 40% through his buyer journey. At what level am I going to put that into my CRM system? 5. We know each other. We do. So I would put it here. So how accurate is the predictability of my pipeline? It's not. Because I'm managing management, who's managing management, who's managing management. It's this whole management. But if you let me actually put it at 40, marketing, you would get credit for the fact that you've done a really good job of driving the customer further along in their journey without a human touch. And so what it does is marketing now says, God, we've been doing all these things, but everyone's still starting out like below 10% or below 15%. We've been making all these investments, and it should really be showing us that it's at 40. That's what I mean by this disconnect. And sales is going, leads are crap, and marketing is going, sales doesn't follow up on leads. That whole conversation that still happens today happens because of this. And so I worry that the more tools we have, right, I truly believe in my heart of hearts and my gut that we don't have a technology problem, we have a people process problem. And a lot of that can be solved by training, absolutely. But you also have to have management's willingness to actually change the process and let someone back a deal up or start it at 40%, where if I started at 40%, let's just say I started it at 60%. He's through his buyer journey, 60% does not mean I'm 60% through my sales process. Buyer journey and sales process are not the same thing. So if you have a buyer journey and a sales process, those are two very distinct numbers. So marketing should get credit for how far they are in their journey, which means they've done a good job. But then the sales process doesn't match one-to-one, that 40% equals 40%, because I may say, well, I've only spoken to him for the first time. So to me, that's 5% because I don't know what's going to happen. But that still means that he's over here, which means we may have a better opportunity to accelerate this deal if we started using some of the tools and predicting what was going to happen next. So that's what I mean by speed and technology. But woven through all that, the examples that I gave were people issues, right? All right, so the next one is what happens when speed and technology disconnect. It manifests itself in this horrible customer experience. Unintended, but horrible customer experience. And so your brand is the sum of all the decisions that you make. What does your brand stand for? And then what are those decisions that you make? And that should actually show itself in the technology choices you make, in the speed and the people process, should always be centered around the customer and the customer experience. This new level of engagement I often hear is, oh, Tiffany, that's such a B2C play. And almost as much as I don't like the triangle and the linear sales model, I also don't like this heavy distinction still being used between B2C and B2B. Because for me, last time I checked, we're all consumers. And when we show up to work in the morning, it's not like we take one outfit on and put on our B2B hat. But in many ways, when we're sitting at work, we're like, God, it is just not that hard to do this in my consumer life. Why is it so difficult to do in my business life? So these numbers are actually showing that the B2B customers' expectations are actually higher around personalization because we bring in our consumer hat and say, boy, I'm really communicated well to in my consumer life. Why in my B2B life are they not personalizing things to me? Right, so what can you learn from the B2C side of the fence? If any of you have both sides, watch B2C for a while. What can you learn and apply? Or vice versa. If you don't have and you only have one, go outside your industry and see what people are doing on the B2C side. Now, why is this? Because personalization is driving customers to say, I'll actually spend more money. I will spend more money for a personalized, engaged, higher level of experience. So I'm going to ask a question since I can't see it on the table. Okay, so how many of you this morning knew that there was going to be fresh coffee here for free and still went downstairs to Starbucks? Okay, so you look like smart guys. You drop $6, it was free right here. Now, how many of you drink Starbucks? And I know Starbucks is in the room, so I love you too. I really do. I actually got asked to not do this example anymore, but I no longer work where I used to work, so I'm going to do it anyway. So many people drink it, and they think it's okay coffee. But it has everything to do with the experience. I know how to order. I know what to do. I pay with the app. You know exactly how quick you can get in and out. You have an expectation that it doesn't matter where I am in the world. I can use my Starbucks app. I don't have to have the currency. I know how to order it. I know that I can get in and out of there in less than a few minutes. I mean, that is why I do it, even if it's a little more expensive and even if it's competing against free. How many of you ride Uber? How many of you have stood in the corner and watched a cab drive by while you wait for Uber? Okay, so why do you do that? Yes, it's a business model disruption, but really, at the end of the day, it was an experience disruption. It was an experience disruption. I can travel around the world. I can use my app. It hits my expense report immediately without me having to take a picture of a receipt, which I always lose. I don't have to carry the cash. I don't have to carry the currency. I don't have to do any of that. And by the way, just in case someone knows where I was last, which is a good thing because I'm usually on the road. I'm on the road by myself. So at the end of the day, it hits a lot of the things from an experience standpoint that it might be a little more expensive, and I will wait on the corner while the taxi drives by because it is about the experience. And I'll even pay a surge price as the taxi drives by. That is what I mean by customers will spend more for customer experience. And so as this channel proliferation of how does Uber communicate with me? What are the things they're doing in the ecosystem? What else are they offering with Spotify? And now it's Uber Eats, and now I can get everywhere in my neighborhood. Uber Eats can deliver me food even though the restaurant doesn't have delivery service. All of those things and then how do they communicate with me is all through this channel proliferation because we expect the seamless experience regardless of sort of how we want to engage with the brand. And how quickly when you have a problem on the app, how easy it is to say I have a problem and how quickly it's rectified and responded to, or how proactively they'll come at you and say, I see that this is what happened, like the driver didn't show up, it was a longer period of time, then they said, like, we're going to give you a $3 credit, and I didn't even ask for it. I didn't have a problem. That's what I mean by that proactivity. So taking all of this and upping the ante has everything to do with delivering it. At the end of the day, your best sales force is your customers advocating on your behalf. How many of you met before? So how many of you use Uber? How many of you sat down and met with an Uber sales rep before you downloaded the app? Never happened. Yet this whole room uses Uber. So your best sales force is customers advocating on your behalf. How many of you also take Lyft? So not as many. How many of you Uber riders tried Lyft and then went to Uber? Yeah, so I never tried Lyft. I just have used Uber because it just consistently met my expectation. We'll see. I'm going to London on Sunday. So we'll see how good it is there with the black cabs and what they're doing. But what's interesting about that to me is the black cabs are fighting the wrong fight. They're trying to stop innovation instead of saying, okay, well, what do our customers actually want and why are they choosing Uber over us and how do we change the experience we deliver so that we can gain back some of the customers instead of being really rude from the front seat. Because all that does to me is makes me want to keep driving Uber when I'm in London. So how do you achieve it? How do you do it? Not easy. Because people process, as you've heard, change is really difficult. I believe all of us, in my world anyway, we sell change. We don't sell technology. Change is hard. By January 10th, my New Year's resolutions are done. I've moved on, waiting for next year. So change is hard. So the way you have to do it is you have to think about these disconnected teams. This is one thing in the last 18 months I've found really fascinating because I meet with customers who are saying, we don't have the right utilization, our sales teams aren't logging in, they're not filling out all the fields. It's all this sort of what the sales reps are not doing, and then the people that are saying it to me, there's nobody from sales in the room. Or there's nobody from marketing in the room. Or there's nobody from customer service in the room. So there's this huge disconnection between the teams. And if you have disconnected teams, I guarantee you it's because you have disconnected metrics. So what are sales measured on? Did you sell? Did you not sell? We're really easy people. Super simple. You hit your number, you don't hit your number. Black, white, easy. Service may be how fast did you get the customer off the phone, first time to resolution. Marketing may be how many leads did you drive? Good, bad, doesn't matter. How many leads did you drive? I'm oversimplifying, of course. So let's use an example. Marketing now using technology and predictive. They now know people who buy apples and oranges also want bananas. So a customer calls in. The system tells them, you have apples and oranges. I think you need bananas. Customer service rep is supposed to get off the phone in 3 minutes. Otherwise, she gets dinged or he gets dinged. Got 10 seconds left on the call. 10, 9, 8, 7. What does that rep do? Hang up the phone or try to sell him a banana? Anybody? Hang up the phone. What was best for the customer? Selling them the banana. So that's why the metrics pull people in different directions. It wasn't that the customer service rep woke up that day and said, you know what, I'm just really going to not give good service to everybody. That's not what they said. You know, it happened to me a couple months back. I was going down to Australia. I had 4 hotels I was staying at. It was all in one chain. It wasn't this chain. It was all in one chain. And so I called, and I'm a priority member, and I called my priority line, and I said, hey, I've got some confirmation numbers I need to add to my loyalty program. So let me give them to you. Okay, yes, sure, happy to. So I say, you know, it's A4. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Ms. Bova. I can't do that. That's an international reservation. What you need to do is hang up the phone and call the properties. What? Hello? Did I call the priority platinum line? You did. Okay, just checking. Just wanted to make sure you just told me to hang up the phone and call 4 properties. Now, do you think that that customer service agent woke up and said, I'm just really going to piss off our top customers today? Probably not. But something. Maybe the field didn't let them to add a letter. Maybe they didn't have long-distance outbound call capabilities. Maybe it was he had to get off the phone in 3 minutes. Whatever the reason, these 2 things drove me to have a really bad experience, which I'm now repeating on stage without the brand for obvious reasons. But then I found out that the customer was a customer. I mean, that the brand was a customer. So I said, oh my God, I know you can do better. So call the sales rep. Hi, I need to talk to whoever owns the loyalty program at this brand because they have got to add the field to just take, you know, an international reservation. Because I knew that it wasn't a technology problem. It was a people process problem. So getting to the next level of this transformational journey, we have all kinds of things coming at us. This sort of sign at the bottom on the single source of truth. I love it in concept. I believe in it. It's probably one of the hardest things we have to do. Because for any of us who have been in business more than sort of 5, 7 years, you've got data everywhere. And it could be in different databases. It could be in legacy systems, could be in homegrown systems, and you're trying to modernize yourself at the same time that you're trying to keep the lights on. And that's very difficult, right? Transforming a sales team while they have to hit numbers. I used to call the seller's dilemma. It's really tough. Modernizing a data center while you're trying to keep the lights on and not disrupt business as usual and get products out and bottles capped and, you know, chairs built and all the things that have to happen, it's really tough. And maybe you'll never get to the single source of truth, but the goal is that the more you know about the customer, the better you're going to be in that predictive, right? If they have apples and oranges, well, if apples was from one division and oranges was from another division and bananas was from another division, but the power of that is you've just taken the average sales price, the lifetime value, the recency, you've reduced churn, you've done all these things. The combination of those 3 things makes that customer so much more sticky. The value of putting apples and oranges together so you can start to see the pattern and then bringing in banana, don't let the fact that it's 3 different sales forces within your company that are comped very differently make you make the wrong decision. So the single source of truth will highlight and shine on your company the fact that these disconnections are happening. The collaboration between content is what I was just talking about. If you don't have the metrics aligned, the teams don't work together. If the teams don't work together, remember me as a customer, I have a bad experience. And trust me when I tell you, So how many of you remember what you paid for your last Starbucks? Right. You don't. What did you pay for your last Uber ride? You don't. And why is that? Because what's happening is service is becoming the product, and what you remember is the experience and not the price, which goes back to what I was just saying, that 86% of customers are more willing. And so this collaboration is really driving the fact that people will spend more. Now, obviously, some of this is training, some of it's technology, but a lot of it has to do just with the corporate philosophy, or where is the customer in the decisions that you make. And so getting all the way to this new business model, the one thing I would add here is if you look at, let's just say, Southwest Airlines, and when other airlines tried to replicate the low airline cost, sort of hub and spoke model, whether it was, TED with United, or there was a bunch of them, let's just say, they replicated the business model. We're going to do a hub and spoke. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be fast check-in. It's not going to be any frills. It's going to be peanuts. It's going to be soda. They replicated the business model, and it failed. Why? Why did it fail? Anybody want to take a shot? They didn't replicate the people in the process. So let's call it the mental model. They did not replicate the mental model. JetBlue replicated the mental model and the business model. And the business model. You need both. So the mental model is underlying all of this. If your executives are on board, it has to show itself in the metrics. It has to show itself in the collaboration. It has to show itself in the investments that they make in training and in tools and in people, and really saying, what are the things we can do from a process perspective? So what high performers do differently? They drive these connected customer experiences, the journeys. It's fascinating. We have a company that Salesforce Ventures has invested in that did some analysis on 2 billion customer journeys using analytics and AI and machine learning, and found the patterns in the journey. And when I tell you, it looked nothing like this slide here. 2 billion might be a number that will prove it to your executives that this is not what happens. Because they go, oh, yeah, it's not enough sample size. Different industry. Not us. We're different. If I could have $1 for everybody who is different. Everybody's different. Yet any company, in any industry, anywhere in the world, when I walk in and I go, what are you challenged with? It's always the same handful of things. So customer journey is important, but remember, customer journey in isolation, knowing it and understanding it, doesn't change the fact that the sales process has to match that journey and be flexible enough to meet the customer where and how they want to be engaged. The next is you have to think about those workflows in the organizational structure. You need to keep your tech stacks fresh. Now, I don't mean sort of rip and replace all the time. Yes, cloud gives us a ton more flexibility, absolutely. But I'm more about sort of pilot, test, does it work, move on, let the organism breathe and grow. It isn't we make a decision and 3 years later when it's time for a renewal, we make another decision, or I buy and 5 years later I have to buy. It's this constant making sure that does it still map back to what our mission was when we deployed it? Because I would argue that our mission as companies has changed over the last couple of years because of the Uberization and the Airbnbs and the others in the world, the AWSs, et cetera, Salesforces, et cetera. People's business models have been really pressured. So there's no way you could say it's always been that way, so that's the way we're going to do it. We have to have the willingness to challenge the status quo. And then stay on the cutting edge with AI. I can't stress this enough. When I started my sales career, I used WordPerfect because I'm only 30. And then I graduated to a single user version of ACT along with my little Rolodex, for any of you who remember what a Rolodex is. And I would spin the Rolodex, and wherever it stopped, that's who I called. It was sort of very scientific. And I would say today, and I was hitting my number, by the way. I would hit my number or exceed my number. And so I say today, it's one thing that makes me kind of want to get back into sales is the power of AI and how it would really give me all this insight that would say, no, you don't have to call 100 people a day so that then 10 call you back and then you get 3 meetings. That funnel, that now I only need to call the 10 that are going to more likely engage with me, But yet I meet a lot of sales reps, individual quota-bearing sales reps who say, my boss still makes me call 100 people. I'm like, oh my God. How many of you in the room that are sales still make your people call a certain number every day? Go ahead. We're in a circle of trust. Come on, a couple. I mean, there's no way the rest of you are not. I have to, I'm sorry. Anybody? So all of you just, really? Okay, 2. Both women, I might add. Right? Okay, so we're going to try one more time. How many of you still make your sales reps call out a certain number every day? Yeah. So the problem with that is that it isn't in the number. It isn't in the volume. It's in the data if you can get to it. So for me, data is the new oil, full stop. Ben said a lot. But I think analytics is the refinery. You cannot drive to an oil rig and put oil into your car. You need the refinery, which is the analytics, in order to deliver you the petrol and the gas, which to me is the intelligence to power the business. Data for data's sake doesn't do it. Problem is we're hoarding the oil. We're hoarding the oil in the teams. We're hoarding the oil amongst groups. We're hoarding the oil because we're worried that if they take the information, they're going to go do something with it that impacts my business. But in the end, it's all about this intelligence to drive the customer forward. So the future is contextual to me. You have to establish a customer-centric culture. Think about the customer, work your way backwards. Redefine relationships, influence, and engagement. Remember, your customers are your best sales force. Select KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics that foster the right behavior. Remember, it's time for me to sell a banana. Don't hang up the phone because it's 3 minutes. Let me, empower me, give me the freedom to serve the customer even if the call goes 5 minutes. Use data in context. What is it telling you? Don't just dial down 100. Use the predictive to get smarter about who are the 10 or the 15 or the 20 that you should be calling today based on what the system is now learning. And then drive towards this really tight sales engagement, very intimate. When I say sales here, I mean that as an all-up number. I don't mean sales like just individual quota carrying. I mean people who are customer facing, right? It needs to be this intimate engagement because with every touch, you have an opportunity to get that customer to be far more loyal and engaged with you. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for your time and letting me come up and I never get to do this, so that's what's great. Work on the whiteboard and thank you for participating, being a great participatory audience. We've got a couple minutes, so I'm happy to answer a few questions. If you would like to ask, if I haven't completely freaked you out. Anybody? Yes.
So this is actually a Salesforce related question, but tied to what you're talking about here. So I had a company call on me the other day who said that they were going to take our information from Salesforce, they were going to take it from our email system, they were going to take it from news and social media and all these things, and be able to tell me where the best opportunities were for our salespeople to go attack based upon the combination of all of these things.
Yes.
Which sound like a pretty fascinating thing, but my thought was, why isn't Salesforce doing that? Or are they, and I just don't know that?
Yes. So we bought a company called Crux that does, it's sort of known, unknown, and then primary data source, sort of first level data, which you own, and then second level data will be ones that have agreed to share data, and third level might be something like Dun & Bradstreet or something like that, pulling that all together and giving you greater insights across what customers are doing, prospects, et cetera.
Because if that can happen, then it solves my real problem, which is getting salespeople to enter things in early into the system.
Yes.
Yeah,
and accurate. And more importantly, I don't think any sales rep wakes up in the morning and goes, oh my God, I can't wait to enter data. That's not what happens. So the more the system can actually enter the data on behalf of the sales rep, like I had a meeting with her yesterday. The system knows I had a meeting. I closed out the meeting. It should log the fact I had a meeting. And if I had notes on what it was supposed to do, I could have attached my little PowerPoint or my little, Word doc or whatever it was, Quip doc in our case, attach it in. And I didn't have to do any of that, right? In a perfect world, all that kind of mundane task that the system can do on your behalf should be happening. Listen, the problem is sales reps have a fatigue around CRM for the last 3 decades. It's always going to make us sort of taller, thinner, richer. And it hasn't yet. We're finally at a place where this AI, machine learning, and some of this automation, and the fact that it's very collaborative and cloud-based is getting us closer to the point in which that starts to happen very seamlessly. But it's happening today, but you may not know about it, or you know about it, but you can't get anybody else to sort of engage in it, right? And then we've got these other problems. So this is why I said I don't think it's a tech problem. It's a people process problem. But yes. Anybody else? Well, great. With that, I so appreciate your time and being customers. So thank you, guys.